How far would you go to claim your rightful inheritance? Hi everybody, Anthony here from Awesome Anthony Productions, and today I'm going to give you my review of the latest release from A24, How to Make a Killing. How to Make a Killing stars Glen Powell as Beckett Redfellow, the illegitimate son of a young heiress disowned by her family, forcing him to grow up just above the poverty line. But there's a catch. The last Redfellow in line will inherit the entire family fortune.
The real estate, planes, an island or two,
regardless of status or whether they're even recognized by the family or not. So Beckett, honoring his mother's deathbed wish to never stop fighting for a piece of the pie, hatches a plan to take out the rest of his family and get what's rightfully his, all while nurturing a budding romance with Jessica Henwick's Ruth and fending off the constantly snooping Julia, a childhood friend played by Margaret Qualley. Will Beckett succeed in getting his inheritance, or is this all going to come crashing down on top of him? The trailer sold me on this movie pretty much instantly. Glen Powell is a rising star I've had my eye on over the last few years. A24 distributes pretty consistent bangers, and the rest of this cast is absolutely stacked. You've got him, Margaret Qualley, Jessica Henwick, Zach Woods.
There are plenty of people who love touching me. I'm a terrific hugger.
Topher Grace, Ed Harris. Combine that with what looked to be a pretty effective use of dark comedy and a scathing commentary on the rich and their lavish lifestyles, and I was in.
You son of a bitch, I'm in!
Now, does the movie actually live up to the promises made in that trailer? That's a whole other question to dive into. But first, like I tend to do, let's talk about the cast here, because they really are the strongest point of this movie. To start, Glen Powell as Beckett. This dude is super charming, and I have yet to see him in a role where he's unlikable, and this is no different.
I like this guy.
Is he a good guy? Not especially. I know eat the rich is a popular sentiment nowadays, but this character is still actively killing members of his family to get their money.
that's just wrong.
So I can't go as far as saying that he's good. Damn if he isn't charming, especially in that opening act. From the beginning scenes of him retelling the story of the movie to a priest while he's on death row. Not really a spoiler, they reveal that in the first 10 seconds. To the way he takes that leap to start enacting his plan, you sympathize with him every step of the way, right down to the nerves and anxiety he feels with his first murder. That also extends to the chemistry he has with the rest of the cast. Whether it's an unlikely connection with his uncle Warren, played by Bill Camp, his uneasy reconnection with Margaret Qualley's Julia.
Until then, I'm sure you'll make a killing.
Or his budding romance with Jessica Henwick's Ruth. He has a good voice for the voiceover too, even though I'm not totally sure that works, but I'll talk about that later. And he definitely does help propel the movie forward. There's just something missing here.
Something ain't right.
He's charming, he has a great voice, but his character never really goes any deeper than that. Beckett Redfellow has like 3 main emotions throughout this film: happy, nervous, and angry, with Glen Powell mainly just relying on that smile and charm to work this character.
That damn smile.
And that's fine for a while, but at a certain point, I just wanted something more, and the movie never really delivered on that. More passion, more anger, more something. And this is definitely more of an issue with John Patton Ford's script and direction than it is with Powell himself. Actually, he's the main problem with the entire movie, but I'll get to that in a second. Yeah, outside of the first act and a crucial point in the climax where he actually shows some genuine fear and anger, Beckett's just not a particularly complex or deep character at all, regardless of how much charm and screen presence that Glen Powell brings to him. And that honestly extends to the rest of the cast too, aside from maybe Margaret Qualley and Bill Camp, with the latter bringing a strong emotional core to the movie that I appreciated. But Jessica Henwick, Topher Grace, Zach Woods, Ed Harris, they all turn in great performances, but these characters have about as much depth as a puddle on the sidewalk.
What puddle?
That bottle!
And really are nothing more than caricatures, with those last 3 essentially just having glorified cameos. Henwick's the girlfriend, Grace is the hypocritical pastor, Woods is the narcissistic, pretentious artist, Harris is the evil patriarch of the family. They're all unmemorable, and with a little bit more depth, we actually would have rooted for Beckett to take them out, instead of just feeling indifferent to it. Margaret Qualley, however, yes, she's another one that could have used a lot more depth in the writing department, but whenever she's on screen, absolute scene stealer.
Beckett, no way. So are you living in the city now?
A little outside of it.
Whatever happened to the Redfellow family fortune?
Everything about her, from her fashion to her confidence to her thinly veiled threats, it all goes above and beyond to make this admittedly thin character stand out. And all that credit goes to Qualley's acting prowess. I hated this character by the end.
You bitch.
And I think that just means that she nailed it. Moving away from the cast and characters, let's talk about the story. What works and what doesn't. Like I said, I think the first act here is the best part of the movie, drawing us in with a hell of a hook with Beckett telling his story to a priest on death row. And the way the film explains where his plan comes from, while making you feel for his less than ideal situation, is pretty solid. And the first few kills he commits are pretty interesting on their own, with a good amount of dark humor thrown in, which was definitely working for me.
I'm actually very dark and twisted.
But from there, the film just runs headfirst into run-of-the-mill, predictable territory for an eat-the-rich film like this, but without any real teeth that you would see in other movies in this genre.
Toothless.
This isn't helped by Glen Powell's voiceover, which, though he brings that charm to the role, was just unnecessary and actually robs the film of a lot of tension. And when it comes to the thriller aspects, this movie could have gone so much darker. And there are a few late in the runtime twists that almost bring it there, but they never really committed to that darker tone, and that just kind of left me disappointed. I know I'm a big horror buff, but I don't need every movie I see to be disturbing or gory. That being said, with a story premise like this, I was expecting at least some on-screen violence, blood, or tension from these scenes, and the movie either cuts away from it or treats every kill as a joke, immediately moving past it afterwards. Beckett barely has any moral misgivings about what he's doing either, and that makes it that much harder to sympathize with him. I know I'm turning into my pretentious nitpicky self again, but there's also plot holes galore in this film, bordering on completely frustrating with how incompetent the detectives are that pop up here, played by Fumi Tao and Steve Mark. I mean, I cannot count the amount of times in this film where Beckett will commit a crime and leave his fingerprints and DNA all over the place with basically no follow-up on that.
It's so dumb.
The pacing also just feels so uneven. After that incredible first act, things go from excruciatingly drawn out to completely rushed. At one point, it's like the movie suddenly remembered that Beckett's supposed to be killing people and speed runs like 4 of them in a montage scene. If there is another place that I can give praise to though, besides the opening and Margaret Qualley, it's Emile Mosseri's score. This soundtrack does a lot of heavy lifting to make this film feel more tense and quirky than it actually is, and there's a few electronic inspired tracks that actually stuck in my brain for a while after watching. Overall though, this is really just a paint-by-numbers dark comedy that suffers from a lack of depth in the script, uneven pacing, and an unwillingness to commit to the darker and weirder aspects of the story. While Glen Powell is charming as ever but doesn't really fit this type of film, the cast are all caricatures, and the movie just doesn't really have enough bite or unpredictability to make it land for me. That being said, it has a hell of a hook in a first act, a great soundtrack, and an incredible performance from Margaret Qualley. So at least it wasn't a complete waste of time. And that's my review of How to Make a Killing. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like, comment if you saw this movie, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to be notified whenever I post. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time for my review of Psycho Killer.